Hi, this is Earth Path Crystals, and I am White Fawn. This is episode 3, and today we are going to be talking about Moldavite. This is Moldavite. Moldavite is silicon dioxide with aluminum oxide. Now, Moldavite is akin to the elements of air and fire, so you could use it for air or fire in elemental work. It is formed from a meteor that crashed into the earth and created a bunch of molten debris, and that's where we get some of the shapes. Like you see here with this one, it is a teardrop. You will see teardrops, you will see spheres, you will see these flat pancake kind of shapes, and it's all dependent on how far the molten material went away from the impact site will create these different shapes. Now, some other stones that I'd like to draw your attention to are obsidian. So obsidian is silicon and oxygen. So this little guy is obsidian. He's formed from volcanoes, from lava flow. Now the only difference between this and Moldavite is that this has the aluminum oxide element to it. So they're very similar as far as energy. So if you like working with Moldavite, you'd probably also like working with obsidian. And I personally find that if you work with the two together, they both have properties of focusing and intent and purpose. So they'd be really good together for that. We also have Muscovite. Now, Muscovite is used for angelic channeling. So this one is interesting because these are both channeling stones. And I find that when you put these together, you get kind of a different energy, almost like a different level of energy, like a different realm almost. So it might be interesting to play with and kind of experiment with. Now, Chrysocolla is another stone with aluminum base in it. And Chrysocolla is connected to the throat chakra, where Moldavite is the thymus, which is the upper heart chakra, the third eye, and the crown. And I find if you use these two together in practice, you are hooking those chakras up, boom, 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 and you'll feel them kind of activate from your upper heart on up through your crown. And then there's also Fuchsite. And Fuchsite is similar in composition to Muscovite. They're both mica forms. And this one is just a real soft feeling. It takes the edge off of the Moldavite just a little bit. So a lot of people find that Moldavite is very intense, and they find that it is a little bit much for them to work with. So when you use it with the Fuchsite, it will help with that. So the cool thing about Moldavite as far as what's going on internally, there are these little bubbles that you'll see inside it. If you take a jeweler's loupe and you look really close at a piece of this, there will be these bubbles. A lot of them will be elongated. And those bubbles are filled with gaseous meteorite. So the impact from the meteorite was so violent when it hit that it turned into molten material and gases. So what's actually inside here when you see those bubbles is the gas from that meteorite. And there's also these little weird squiggly wiggly lines. They look like little tiny wormy shapes. And if you look at your Moldavite with a jeweler's loupe, you'll be able to see that. And that is a stone called Chatellerite. Now, Chatellerite is the makings of a quartz crystal, but the process in which the Moldavite formed happened so quickly and so intensely during the cooling that the quartz never had the time it needed to crystallize. So it is amorphous as opposed to a quartz crystal. Now, what is Moldavite good for? Moldavite is great for kicking old habits. So it allows one to really take a look at their character, look at themselves, do a lot of introspection, and really kind of change how it is that they are handling the world, looking at things that might be old coping tools and old habits that they can get rid of. It's also great for channeling work. So you can use this to channel light beings, which the concept behind that is that there are interdimensional beings that are light forms that people can contact, and they use Moldavite to do so. It can help you to understand chronic pain and chronic disease. So this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially with back pain sufferers. And it brings you out of the kind of sorrowful, harmful feelings, that depression that's connected with chronic illness, and starts to lead you into the places you need to go to see the blessings that come with your circumstance. It also is a great aid for astral projection. So if you are someone who is interested in astral projection and you've tried doing it and you have difficulty with it, Moldavite might be a good piece for you to go to help aid in that process. And it also is used by many people to heal the earth. So it's used in environmental and ecological work where people will meditate on bringing light down and putting that bright light white into the earth. So they're using the visualization and the intention along with their actions in the field of environmentalism. So another stone is Lapis Lazuli that I would recommend working with your Moldavite. Now, Lapis Lazuli is really great for knowledge and higher purpose. And I find when I've used Moldavite, what it does for me is it really kind of accesses something that's more deep in the brain. So this isn't necessarily Akashic record work or seeking knowledge from without. This is more working internally. So you are accessing knowledge that you may be closed off to that's inside yourself. And those two do play hand in hand. When you are seeking something without, first you have to find it within, or else you will not find it at all. So it is important to recognize that there is knowledge within ourselves before we try to work with knowledge outside of ourselves. Now, the Moldavite is connected, as I said, to the upper heart or Thymus Chakra. And this might be new to a lot of people. We're used to a 7 chakra system. So you have your root, you have your sacral, your solar, your heart, your throat, your third eye, and your crown. Well, that's the Western kind of popular version of the chakras. There are chakras all throughout our bodies, and that includes the upper heart. So you have your heart, and then there is another one right here. And this one, I want you to visualize, if you're working with this, an aquamarine color. So you have your green chakra, which is your heart, and your blue chakra, which is your throat. This one is between the two, and it's an aquamarine. Now, what is the Thymus Chakra for? This Thymus Chakra is for karmic awareness. It transforms dark to light. And this isn't necessarily duality, good versus evil. This is more what we're thinking of when we're thinking of chronic pain and understanding and changing our views on how we see things. So it's seeing the good where we might equate just the bad. And it also connects to things like forgiveness and agape and that same sense of dark to light. So it has a lot to do with self-realization, and it has to do with intent, our intentions we bring out to the world, which that goes back to karmic awareness, understanding kind of the greater picture. So I feel that is a perfect thing to do for gridding, is focusing on the Thymus Chakra. And the Thymus Chakra is associated with the 6-pointed star or the Star of David. So a Star of David shaped grid would be a perfect thing to use to do gridding work. So you can play with that shape, meditate on that shape, and that would be a wonderful practice for you. Now, how would you use it around your home? Say in color therapy, where you have a green altar, or just in placement around the house. Well, I would recommend using it working with the Buddha. So you could use the Moldavite to work with understanding the Buddha, understanding Buddhist concepts and Buddhist practices, because I feel that the Moldavite energy really has a lot of the same energy as the Buddha, as Christ, and that might be related to the connection to the Buddha being born from his mother's heart. So he was not born of flesh like we think of. He wasn't born from the womb. He was born higher up, which is kind of a connection to understand that this is, you know, a higher person of enlightenment. So we have our lower chakras, which is the root through the solar, and then the gateway to the upper chakras is considered the heart chakra. Now, you could also use it to create unconditional love, which would be great for a color altar, in my opinion. Using it again for Mother Earth healing. And also Moldavite would be great in any kind of astrological sense for representation of Venus. There's a lot of connection both with the color, its astrological signs, as well as its feminine energy. Now, Moldavite is not a stone that fluoresces. So let me show you something here real quick. A lot of the fakes are made out of green bottle glass, and they're going to look like these beads here. So this is like a Heineken bottle, a 7-Up bottle. So a lot of the fakes, you'll see this bright, bright green. But if you look at Moldavite itself, it's like an olivine color, and it even goes into the browns. So if you see a really, really bright green, then that is more than likely a fake. Now, the other thing is this piece right here that I keep showing you, this one is nearly $300. So if you see a piece online and it's this big and it's $10, that should be an indicator right there. That is not real Moldavite. The other things you can look for is the elongated bubbles, which you can see with a jeweler's loupe, and the Chatellerite. The fakes will not have those. They can't imitate the Chatellerite or the long bubbles. So those would be ways to avoid fakes. Now, in meditation, I recommend using the Moldavite for the thymus work. And part of the reason that I feel this way is that the Thymus Chakra is one that in the Western culture is very much not worked with, which is fascinating because, as I said, it has a lot of the same concepts of karmic awareness, agape, intent, beautiful things that we really should work on and work towards, and are part of our culture in other ways. So using the Moldavite to meditate and work on opening up your thymus is something that I'd love for you to do. I would encourage you to do. You can focus on the Star of David shape right here on your chest and have it glowing in an aquamarine glow to help with that meditation process. Now, if you're going to use it with your third eye, that's where it would be great for an astral projection aid. Now, a lot of people have done things like taped the Moldavite to their forehead while they've been sleeping. And they've said that they really have a hard time making it through the night because it's so intense. So I don't know if I recommend going to that extreme, but it is good for those really kind of intense astral projection and other psychic things that are, you know, a little bit more advanced. On a side note, if you don't want to do advanced psychic work, but you still want to work with Moldavite in a psychic way, perhaps connecting to the spiritual is the way you want to go. And Moldavite reconnects us to what's lost. So if you haven't done spiritual work in years and you want to connect back, or maybe you had a few months of chaos and you're trying to get back to that spiritual side, Moldavite's a great go-to for that. Now, working with the crown, this is where interdimensional beings come in. So if you're channeling, if you're a medium, if you're trying out mediumship, this is where you want to use the Moldavite. And I recommend using your quartz pieces with your Moldavite to do that, because quartz amplifies Moldavite and they just love each other. So this will be great for encouraging that energy and encouraging those things. Now, I've heard people say that they have used Moldavite with rose quartz and it kind of makes the effects not so intense so they can handle it. Personally, just like with the Muscovite, I feel like it takes you to a different plane. So you might be contacting different beings, and I would almost venture to say something on more of the fairy realm would come up if you're using a rose quartz piece. Now, in myth, Moldavite is said to be found in the offerings or amulets and talismans that were used with the Venus of Willendorf, and they found these in there. Well, I went through all the Venus of Willendorf stuff, every picture, and I could not find anything that looked like Moldavite. So I personally have no evidence of that. It would be really cool if that was a thing. I hope it's a thing. If someone out there can give me a link, find me the information specifically to show me that Moldavite is something that works well with that feminine energy, something that they did have with the Venus of Willendorf, that would be so cool, and I'd love to hear about it. One of the other myths is that it's connected to the Holy Grail. And there's a story of Lucifer when he fell from heaven. The crown jewel on his head was an emerald, and that got knocked off his head, and then that was put on the Holy Grail. And it's theorized that it wasn't actually emerald, it was Moldavite, being a green stone from heaven. So back in the day, any green stone was called emerald. If it was Jimmy and it was green, it was called an emerald. So maybe there is some credence to that, and they have used Moldavite in crowns and jewelry and all kinds of things for centuries. It's been used since Neolithic time. So I can say, just from what we do have from myths, there's always a little grain of truth. And I think from that, what we see is we see both Moldavite's connection to love and light, and maybe possibly the divine feminine. Now, as I said, people who use Moldavite with rose quartz have found that it dampens the experience. It makes it so it's not quite so intense and they can handle it. I personally feel like it does take the edge off, but it gives you different information. I find that the ruby fuchsite is much more the way to go when it comes to that experience. You should really try to use ruby fuchsite with the Moldavite to kind of lessen the intensity. It is also not suitable for any real earthly pursuits. There's not anything that I can really say as far as it helping any physical issues or helping with any careers, because it is such a psychological and such a spiritual thing to work with. So these keywords I want to give you here today to remember for Moldavite, something plain, simple, easy to remember, catchy. You can just keep this in your head as like your little mnemonic. Divine light, soul's purpose. Moldavite has a lot to do with light and a lot to do with purpose. Divine light, soul's purpose. Those are the things I would like you to leave with the most. Now, if you're going to cleanse your Moldavite, because it is air, I would recommend using your smudge, using your sage, whichever kind of sage you're comfortable with, whatever's from your area is great. And to charge it in sunlight. It loves sunlight, and put it in with some quartz crystals. They will just be really happy together in a windowsill, just in the sun glowing. So everyone experiences Moldavite a little bit different, and so I would love to hear anything that you've used it for, your experiences, your stories, because it really, you know, it can be a different thing for anyone and everyone using it. And that's what makes Moldavite so cool. It's such a personal stone. It's very introspective. It's about self-purpose, self-awareness, karmic awareness. So everybody has a different story to go with Moldavite. And I love to hear yours. So I'll see you next time.